Well, good morning, everyone. It's this reminds me rather of not being in London, a tech festival, more like my constituency, sort of crowded into a slightly chilly room with the rain pouring down outside. But I shall try not to talk about greenbelt development and various other things, and instead talk about where I think we are on the very important agenda of GovTech and digital transformation. And really, this festival here today, CogX, is all about the future. And I think we're going to have a short video. I don't know, is that going to come on? So hopefully we'll start with a video telling you a bit about what the government is doing, and then I will talk some more.
We're passionate about delivering the best public services. By putting users first and meeting their needs, we've become a world leader in digital government. Emerging tech is already making an impact across the public sector. Artificial intelligence, for example, is bringing vital improvements to prison services. AI is used to identify trends in prison reports, leading to better decision-making and improved policy. Car safety. AI used to enforce MOT standards means safer roads and a cleaner environment. Targeting aid in developing countries. Satellite data used to estimate populations means better delivery of aid. The Government Technology Innovation Strategy will build on our success. Our people should be digitally skilled. Our processes should enable us, not hold us back. Our data should be structured, shareable, and secure. Our technology should be up to date. By seizing the opportunities of new tech, we can improve lives.
Well, hopefully that's given you a little flavour of what the government is already doing and what we're looking at doing next. And really, tying that all together is about using new technology, clearly, to deliver better services. And just some of the examples you've seen there, and that includes the Passport Office exploring the use of biometrics, the Ministry of Defence working with virtual reality to create simulated environments for training purposes, and the Environment Agency rolling out body-worn camera to all of its enforcement officers tackling illegal waste sites. So that's all good stuff. But we do need to be doing more, and we need to be doing it faster. So today I want to give you some ideas about where the government goes next and how we're planning to get there. But before I look forward, I just thought I'd reflect a bit on the journey so far. So when I first started working with the government in 2010, initially as a political advisor and then Deputy Chief of Staff in 10 Downing Street for Prime Minister David Cameron, I was there to witness the creation of the Government Digital Service under the excellent work of Francis Maud. And I got a sense of what's needed to drive digital transformation from government. Boldness, not being able to afraid to challenge the status quo, collaboration, and all the while having one eye firmly fixed on the future. And I'm very proud of what we've already managed to achieve and the scale of transformation that we've brought about. So, for example, this includes the creation of gov.uk, which has now replaced nearly 2,000 government websites. It now receives 5.6 million visits every week and has won countless awards, including a Design Museum Design of the Year award. And by 2020, we'll have helped to deliver at least 86 end-to-end digital services, including a new digital mortgage service. These services and all the work we've delivered are designed to improve the interaction between government and the people that we serve. So it's no wonder that the UK is already regarded as a world leader in digital government. We consistently rank in the top 5 of UN e-participation index and e-government development index. And not only is our work admired, it's also inspired other countries. So since just January 2016, 166 international delegations have visited the Government Digital Service to learn more about what we're doing to improve life for our citizens. And this engagement has really delivered tangible results. For example, our open source code enabled the Australian government to launch their own digital marketplace, which, as you know, is where you can buy and sell digital services in just 5 weeks. And almost 18 months ago to the day, I was delighted to take responsibility for driving this agenda forward in government. And this role has afforded me the opportunity to meet tech leaders from across the UK and Europe, and has given me a sense of how respected our work is firsthand. From the GovTech Summit in Paris, hosted by President Macron, to the Innovation in Public Administration Forum, which I attended just last month in Rome, I've heard about how the world looks to the UK to lead. And over the past year and a half, I've also tried to take forward what I believe is a very interesting, exciting initiative in the form of the GovTech Catalyst. Now, by way of background, the GovTech Catalyst is a £20 million programme which aims to incentivise private sector tech companies to help solve public sector problems such as rural isolation, identifying illicit goods at ports, building housing faster, and improving firefighter safety. And I'm hugely encouraged by the change it's already delivered. We've had 93 applications from the public sector, and the approach and funding model have truly proven to be SME friendly. So as of the 30th of May this year, just the end of last month, 55 suppliers have been chosen for the first 11 challenge competitions, and of those, 92% are SMEs. And challenge owners and suppliers have come from all over the United Kingdom too. The majority of them aren't from central London. 60% are based outside central London and the southeast. They come from, we have participants from local government, devolved administrations and arm's length bodies, offering the perfect place to test ideas. And what's also interesting is that almost a third of funded suppliers are micro businesses. Those are businesses with fewer than 9 employees. And I now know that challenge owners are really excited to be working with all of these small businesses. And these relationships really, I think, were unlikely to have come about without the help of the programme. And what makes GovTech Catalyst different is that it allows you, the innovators, to get involved with government and a chance to tell government how you think a problem can be solved. We haven't let ministers identify and chase solutions they like the sound of. We're genuinely open to new ideas. And through collaboration, I know that results will be more successful. So today I'm delighted to give you a further update on this, to announce the latest challenge, which comes from a small county in the valleys of southeast Wales. And starting small often allows us to learn much bigger lessons. So earlier this year, we gave Torfaen County Borough Council £1.25 million of funding to understand how, by improving its use of data, it can better predict, sequence and modernise its social care offering. And today we're offering up the challenge to the private sector to come up with solutions. And now Torfaen is home to 93,000 people, and by 2039, the number of them aged over 85 will have more than doubled. And that's a similar picture to most other parts of the country, where an ageing population makes social care a genuinely growing challenge. So addressing these problems in Torfaen will help us tackle that much larger issue. So if you think you can help Torfaen, and perhaps there are more places in time, please do look at the gov.uk website to see more details of this latest challenge. And whilst it's good to reflect on the progress that we've already made, it's probably not a good idea to dwell there too long. So I will try now to look to the future a bit more. Clearly, we still have much more work to do to help improve the services for the people that we serve and to meet their rising expectations. And the adoption of new technologies by the private sector really is changing how people experience the world. We've all seen it in our own day-to-day lives, whether it's booking a hotel room, arranging a taxi, or navigating around a city. And it really is imperative that the public sector picks up the pace to stay relevant in the way the private sector has. And people rightly expect their interactions with government to be of a consistently high standard. And the challenge really for government is, how do we actually make this happen? How do we use emerging technologies intelligently in the public sector? How is it possible to create the conditions in which innovation can thrive? And how can we engage with our outstanding tech sector to benefit the public and the economy? And these questions have been at the forefront of my mind since I took over this role 18 months ago. So to share some of the progress that we've made and address some of those questions, first I want to talk a bit about the potential for AI in the delivery of public services. Second, to talk about what we're doing around procurement. And then finally, to set out our approach to embedding some of that success for the long term through the Government Technology Innovation Strategy. So when I first joined government in 2010, AI really wasn't on the government's agenda as something that could really benefit the delivery of public services. And now, less than a decade later, it's been identified as the technology which has the most potential to radically transform how government serves its citizens. The financial gains to be had from it are huge, and successfully embedding AI across all sectors will create thousands of jobs and drive growth in the economy. Indeed, by one estimate, AI's contribution to the UK could be as large as 5% of GDP by 2030. So that's why we've committed to an artificial intelligence grand challenge as part of our industrial strategy. But until now, we haven't really had a good understanding of how it's being used in public sector delivery. So that's why we've completed a cross-government review to identify where we're using AI effectively now and where the best opportunities are for its future use. And departments and agencies are actually already embracing AI, as you saw in that opening video. Services, for example, include the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, which is using it to look through records of the 40 million MOT tests carried out across the UK every year to identify where standards are not being measured properly. The Ministry of Justice is targeting safety risks in prisons by using AI to analyse thousands of pages of inspection reports and identify common issues. And the Department for International Development is using AI to analyse satellite images so that they can estimate populations and better target aid. The review also identified that applying AI across government could improve services and make them more efficient in many other areas. And these could include the power of AI, for example, to conduct intelligent inspections and detect fraud, improve cancer checks, and improve detection at the border and deliver a smoother passenger experience. So following the review, we're now producing a guide to using AI in the public sector, which I'm delighted to launch today. And the guide draws on best practice from the private and public sector and will be used by public sector organisations to help them assess opportunities for AI and to implement it ethically, fairly and safely. Now, on the second challenge, the challenge of creating opportunities for new and exciting technologies, we really do need to innovate in procurement, and this is something that has consistently come across in my engagements across the past 18 months. Government funding and procurement processes really do need to change in order to enable more experimentation. And in the past, rigid processes have shut out small, innovative companies with transformative technologies, and clearly that's not right. And the government's aspiration has been clearly stated. It's to spend £1 in every 3 with SMEs by 2022. And we've embarked on a series of reforms to make getting involved in service delivery easier for those SMEs. And they're a vital part of our economy, and the government really does have a duty to support them and their work. So through our existing digital marketplace, we've proven the benefits of getting procurement right. The digital marketplace total sales figure at the end of March were £5.7 billion, and it has encouraged a diverse range of suppliers from all over the United Kingdom. And as I've said, that's helped us meet our target with SMEs. But I do believe there's more that we can do, especially when it comes to buying technology and digital services. And this is especially important given the strength of the tech sector, which we can see all around us this week. It attracts brilliant people and billions of pounds of foreign investment every year. And in 2018, the sector attracted £6.3 billion of venture capital investment, outperforming the whole of the rest of Europe. And it really is people like you in this room who've made this possible. But we'll only be able to maintain this position if the government actively helps to nurture it. So you'll hear more about how we can do this from my ministerial colleagues who are fanning out across everywhere during the course of Tech Week, as you will have seen. But today I want to officially launch Spark, which is a new marketplace for technology innovation that will enable government to access new and emerging technologies. Now, since the start of this year, companies that can demonstrate they can provide at least one new or innovative technology to improve the delivery of public services have been able to apply to join it. And today it's ready to be used by the public sector. And technologies already covered by Spark include artificial intelligence, new security technology, and improvements in hardware engineering. And SMEs feature prominently on the framework. So, for example, Ocasta Studios, a Brighton-based SME which provides gamified learning system called Albert to improve knowledge amongst public-facing staff. There's PFI Knowledge Solutions, a digital services and solutions company which has worked with the London Borough of Camden to transform their citizen-facing services. And as Pinnacle Solutions, a Welsh SME focusing on the Internet of Things and expertise in smart street lighting, environmental monitoring, and waste management. And our ambition is that Spark provides the space for innovative SMEs to drive digital transformation of UK public services and in turn deliver opportunity and growth in the UK economy. So if you're a small tech company or business, both the same really, with a bright idea, I'd encourage you to get online, get your application in, take advantage of this new framework that we're launching today. And finally, if we're to deliver the step change in the adoption of emerging technology across government, we need to plan to embed success for the long term. That's why alongside this, we're publishing the Government Technology Innovation Strategy. This document really is designed to set a direction of travel for government on emerging technologies as we look towards the next spending review and indeed beyond that. It builds on the 2017 Industrial Strategy, the 2017 Government Transformation Strategy, and the 2018 Artificial Intelligence Sector Deal. And of course, it complements work that's already going across government. So, for example, you've seen recently the creation of NHSX and the Department for Education's EdTech strategy, for example. It's deliberately designed not to be flashy and full of announcements, but I really don't make any apology for that. This strategy really is about making sure we have the groundwork there in the first place to do things well. Because I know it's not the job of ministers to try and cherry-pick things that sound exciting in a press release, but to create the right conditions for you, the real innovators, to thrive so that our country, our people, and our economy genuinely benefit. And it really is based on what you've told us we need to do, and it's the result of that extensive engagement across industry. And the strategy is structured to address 3 areas where that engagement found barriers to innovation could occur: people and culture, processes, and technology. From policymakers to buyers of tech to practitioners, our vision is to create a civil service that really understands the possibilities of technology. Now, I'm not suggesting that every civil servant should be able to program and assemble their own autonomous vehicle. I think there's a very, very, very long way from that. But they should know how emerging technology can shape their role and help the government better deliver services for its citizens. And emerging technologies often involve disruption and systemic change. So success requires our leaders to possess a healthy attitude to risk, a mindset open to innovation, and an acknowledgement of the importance of experimentation, and yes, I know this is a very difficult word in civil service, failure as well. We want civil servants across public sector to operate in an agile and iterative way. Leaders should see technology as more than just a delivery tool. It's a way of reimagining operating models and how we deliver public services. So to that end, we will train the next generation of data-literate civil servants by expanding our training and capability offer for both digital, data, and tech professionals. And just like some of our most successful tech companies, we want to ensure that there are many different routes through which we can bring in talent. So we'll also be doubling the number of apprenticeships that we recruit into specialist digital teams. And we'll also address the infrastructure and tools needed to scale technology use across government, update standards and guidance to improve consistency, and explore how we can share best practice in emerging technology use to give teams the confidence in order to experiment. Now, the strategy contains many other recommendations, but I do want to highlight one other commitment we're making to tackle legacy technology in particular. Many teams in government feel that they can't innovate due to the volume of legacy tech that they're carrying. So that's why we're doing more to understand the scale of the challenge and put in place plans to tackle it and ensure ongoing continuous improvement in our technology estate. And I think that the upcoming spending review provides a good opportunity to take this work forward and to build on the other measures set out in the strategy today. And I'm committed to making the case for new technologies as part of this discussion. I'm excited about where we're going, but delivering on this strategy also needs strong partnerships between the private and the public sector. And as I've already said, you, the people in this room and outside it, helped create this strategy. You have a stake in its success, and you'll be instrumental to its delivery. So I'd encourage you genuinely to look at it closely, to share your thoughts and ideas, and continue to work closely with us as we take it forward. So thank you for your time today and for the contribution that you make to the delivery of these world-class public services. I think that today's announcements are just another small step along this path in driving the digital transformation of the public sector that we kick-started back in 2010. And over the coming decade, I'm confident that with your support, we really can all deliver the sort of systematic change that we're working to achieve. So thank you for your time today, and enjoy the remainder of London Tech Week.
Thank you so much for being here. That was awesome. I fully agree. We should all sign up. So thank you. I'm going to leave you in the safe hands of Chris.
Great. Thanks, Tabitha. So we now have our panel discussion. So I'd love to invite up to the stage Tanney from Kainos, Marten Kaevats all the way from Estonia, swinging in before heading off to Ankara, and Natalia Olson and Jean Innes, who will be moderated by Hanna Johnson from Public. This way. Spread yourselves across, guys.
Can you hear me? Yes, great. Hi, I'm Hanna Johnson. I'm the COO at Public. We work with startups to try and transform the public sector through new technologies, whether by accelerating GovTech companies, building new ones, or convening the GovTech market. So I'm very pleased to be here with this brilliant panel to talk about the use of AI in government services. We talk a lot about how government has a very important role in encouraging the adoption of AI and the development and regulation of AI, but we talk a lot less actually about how it can be used in public services to improve people's lives and to make public services more efficient. So that's why I'm very pleased to be here with this brilliant panel. We have Marten Kaevats from Estonia. He's the National Digital Advisor for the Government of Estonia, which is one of Europe's fastest adopters of new technology. Dr. Jean Innes, next to me here, Head of Transformation and Strategy for Faculty, which is formerly known as ASI Data Science. They help organizations, including government, to capture the benefits of AI, and I think that you worked on the AI adoption review, which the Minister's just referenced just now. Tanney at the end here from Kainos, one of the fastest growing digital transformation consultancies in the UK, and also the company that worked on the NHS's very first app. Helping to modernise public services as we move along, and Natalia Olson, who is the serial entrepreneur, CIO and co-founder of the Disruptive Factory, and former innovation advisor to the Obama administration in the US. So a very international perspective across the board. I wonder if we can begin, though, by setting the scene a little bit. Government obviously touches on most areas of people's lives, so it would be good to get a kind of in-person view of what we mean when we talk about the use of AI in government services. And Marten, you were saying just earlier on the way here that in Estonia you have 16 active applications of AI in the public sector. So would you give us a kind of bird's eye view of what that looks like?
Yeah, hello from my side as well. Yeah, in the Estonian government we have 16 live applications of AI, and within the next year we will have about 50 different live AI applications. These current applications are very simple. These don't necessarily mean that they fundamentally change governmental structure. They show an example, and what we need is we are building case studies so that they would make the public sector more enthusiastic about the use of this kind of technologies. The examples vary from measuring traffic, from police, dispensing police officers within a city. And one case is, for example, the EU gives us funds to mow the grass in the countryside, and inspectors need to check whether they've done it or not 3 times a year. So we use satellite imagery to do that, and we can allocate basically the inspector's time. This application, the mowing the grass type of an application, it cost us about 50,000 euros to build it, but it saved us about 750 in the first year already. So that's an example of how much it can actually save. But I would really fundamentally want to bring that AI is changing the way government actually operates. And within Estonia we see basically with changes in AI and system architecture in general, I think we can automatize roughly 85% of the whole governmental bureaucracy within the next 5 years. We want to do that without building a big brother, and that is very important. Estonia has been from the ground up built on the value that every citizen is actually the owner and in control of their data. So we are on this mission, and AI is helping us a lot.
85%, that's a huge number. Are you finding that people are coming along with that journey, or how do people feel about 85% of government services being automated?
So in Estonia is in a kind of a positive feedback loop spiral from the society perspective. The society has understood that these types of digital technologies make their lives easier. They've had this positive experience. Like, for example, I probably spent less than 15 minutes in my whole lifetime declaring taxes. Like I did it this year in 18 seconds. The average is 3 minutes in Estonia. So that gives you an example how this stuff makes my life easier. And the whole society has got these types of experiences. So I think we tend to be more open towards the implementation of new technologies. But it's also because fundamentally the background system architecture is distributed and it's auditable, which means that every citizen actually can go to a governmental website, see who has been looking at their data, when and why, and there is like full transparency within the system architecture. So these different mechanisms of distributed trust actually help us to provide this system. And make the society be more open towards new technologies as well.
Great. Jean, Estonia is well recognised as a world leader. You've just worked, faculty has just worked with the UK government on the AI adoption review. How are we measuring up here?
Thanks. I guess the interesting thing working on the AI adoption review was we really did get a bird's eye view of what's going on across the UK government. And I guess the message is there's some amazing stuff going on in the UK government. I guess to pull out a couple of examples, has anybody applied for a UK passport recently? Did you apply online? Did it work? This is just incredible. I remember when there were headlines, there were queues around the block. It was a shambles, and that was like 5 years ago. So you've got to give a big shout out to the really strong analytics team at the Home Office that have actually done that. And so they now risk assess passport applications, and so they triage them and put their sort of examinations or inspections where they're at the highest risk. I think that's a really nice example of where there's a very direct citizen benefit, and it's not too big brothery. I guess it's a nice example of a really practical example where there was a very, very clear problem. So got to give a shout out to the Home Office. I think the Ministry of Justice, I think the Minister talked about them. I saw some lovely work on predicting prison violence, so looking at patterns of violence when people arrive at prison. I guess I'd also like to, obviously the defence and the intelligence agencies are doing some pretty serious stuff. And I think there is generally an opening up and a willingness which feels really new. And I definitely think the GovTech Challenge has done a lot to do that, putting together people in the public sector who want to innovate and opening it out to companies that want to respond.
Great. Austin, I know that you and at Kainos were working, I think one of the examples the Minister mentioned was with the DVSA. As a former civil servant myself, I know that you can often have ministerial buy-in for something, but getting on the ground and actually working to deliver those ambitions is quite hard. How did you find that experience? Was it easy? Was it hard?
It's been very interesting, and to be honest, I'm quite proud of the fact that when I came up here, I don't have to introduce Kainos because Oliver Dowden introduced us. We're the people who built the DVSA solution, and Jean, thank you for mentioning the passport service, which we also built. Again, you know, the applications that you guys are already using and that are already in place are solutions that Kainos has actually developed and built. We've got a number of projects in flight with a variety of different government offices and with healthcare organisations. And I've actually been surprised by how keen departments are to adopt this new tech. Because, and I think this is part of the thing, we have this track record of having put these applications in place. But like you say, what we're trying to do here, we're not trying to do Big Brother society, you know, we're not trying to monitor credit risk and track citizens like some countries may be. But what we're really doing is using artificial intelligence and machine learning to try and improve and automate processes, to make people's lives better, to make the roads safer, to make passport applications easier. And I think that's what we've come to this from that perspective. We've worked with GDS and the UK government for years. And our whole focus has always been, how do we build better services? And it just happens to be that AI is a technology that helps us to build better services, and to build them better, and to make them faster, simpler, and more efficient.
Natalia, I wonder if you could come in here, because we've talked a little bit about the UK, we've talked about Estonia. Europe in general is tended to be considered behind the US. What was your experience in the Obama administration and more recently with Disruptive Factory?
Sure. So we were in an interesting situation, the recession, the worst recession since the Great Depression. So what we had to do really is we couldn't hire people, right? We couldn't we had a tight budget, so we had to empower the public sector. We had to empower our civil servants. We had to, you know, when I went up to them and said, we're going to put everything on the cloud because it makes sense. This is 2010. They were looking at me like I'm crazy. So talking, you know, building that bridge and bringing people from the outside, especially the business community, really important. Figuring out how we were going to get the capital, because we have a very strong program called the SBIR program, which is how a lot of companies got started. You know, Apple, Intel, any company that you see has had any type of help is from the government. And it's for government, you know, to set the ecosystem, but for the innovators, for the business community to come in and really do a lot of the work. Because it takes the government a little bit longer. And when you are stuck in a situation with budget constraints, it's very difficult. So, you know, the first thing that President Obama did was open the data. We need good data sets for artificial intelligence to work. So the first executive order done in 2009, the first one he did is the open data, which actually, you know, helped create the sharing economy, create crowdfunding, figuring out the data. You know, the previous administrations thought that this was, you know, top secret information, and public data is for the public. And so the idea there is, how do we get it out there? And so we did all these challenges. You know, we tried to invite as much as possible the academics and, you know, get everyone to the table. The most important thing is to get the stakeholders to have a good balance between the business community and the public sector. So we're out of a recession. You know, we did that, not this administration.
It's an interesting point, the bringing together of different people. And you mentioned the challenges. The Minister also mentioned the GovTech Challenge Fund, £20 million. They've done 11 challenges so far. Is that enough? Is that moving quickly enough? It's all coming from GDS. It's all centralized in one place. Is that not something we should have across departments? Should that not be something everyone is doing? Austin, what do you think about that?
I think it's great. I don't want to sound critical, but yeah, we definitely need to do more. The GovTech Challenge and SBRIs in Northern Ireland, I've worked previously in companies that have taken advantage of this kind of funding. And it is fantastic because it gives you a stakeholder, it gives you a challenge, and it gives you money to develop a solution. But yes, I think we need to fundamentally do more. The actual budget allocated to this, I think, needs to be increased massively. Because again, this is an opportunity. You know, Jean, in faculty, you guys have done some amazing work using the money from the GovTech challenges. And I do think it's an amazing way for smaller companies and bigger companies to actually get involved in working with government. Because I think that's one of the big challenges that we face, is actually, how does a smaller organization or any organization not get past public procurement, but how do they get involved? You know, once you're on the G-Cloud framework, sure, that's fine, your services can be purchased there. But if you're a small company of 2, 3, 5 people, how do you take your great idea and actually bring it to government? And I think things like the GovTech Challenge and SBRIs are a fantastic way to do that. And again, I would just like to see that grow more.
Marten, I think you wanted to come in.
So the main lesson from Estonia on building a digital society in 20 years, that actually tech has got very little to do with this. This is a cultural change and change in mindset. So it's about building organization in a way that is constantly adaptable. AI is just one of the buzzwords now, but what it tells us is the world will change fastly, and we have to build our organizational culture in a way that is constantly adaptive and flexible. So from the Estonian side, in order to do that, from the AI side as well, we're completely actually changing the system architecture from the back end to make organizations also more adaptable to those changes, including the procurement side.
And on the procurement side, one of the things that we did, and that's why, it's really important to use the government as a catalyst. So 23% of everything that we buy as a US government, that's $500 billion per year, 23%, which is $100 billion, has to be procured by a small business. And within that, we raised the bar, and we said 5% of that has to be procured by a women-owned company, by a minority-owned company, by a veteran company, and an area company in an area of disadvantage. So increasing that, and really doesn't cost the government anything. It's very tiny. So how do you say to businesses, we're going to go ahead and, we're going to buy products from you so you can grow? Because all these large businesses, they all started small, okay? Everyone has to realize that. And so what's important there is how do we, elevate them and get them to the next level?
Yeah, I thoroughly agree with that. Kind of just open up the potential, and people will rise to the occasion. The thing I'd like to add is kind of building capability in public sector organizations, because this is different. I used to be a civil servant, and it's a different world. I think the civil service has probably changed since I was in it, but there is a kind of a level of comfort with technology that we need to really build in public organizations. It's not rocket science, it's doable. I think the Minister talked about training courses for using data. The Minister also talked about a public sector AI toolkit, which we worked on as part of the review of AI adoption. And that's the sort of the place where it's not something people are made to do. It's something that people feel is a solution, is a good place to go. So I think that's the thing I would add alongside that, sort of opening up the potential.
I think also, just on the procurement point, there's a differentiation to be made between small businesses and startups, because the definition of a small business takes you to actually quite a large number of people and a large turnover, and some of those innovators who are really will really turn the key, I think, are actually much smaller than that. So seeing some targets around that would be really good too. I wonder if we could think about the limits of AI. We've talked a bit about the opportunity, and I think everyone in the room will probably agree that AI has transformative opportunity. But are there areas of public services that it shouldn't touch? I think earlier this year, Marten, there was talk of AI being used in courtrooms to make decisions, and a little bit of backlash came out of that. Is that something that you found, or do you think there are limits to what we should be using it for?
No. The Estonian case of building a robotic judge is actually fairly simple. I think the hype was bigger than the reality. It's about smaller, simpler cases up to 10,000 euros, traffic fines and something like that. For big part of governmental side, governments are very linear. They work on laws. Laws are if and then type of programming. So actually, in many cases, like this type of that you need to have a judge as a person, yeah, of course, if there's like a complex case of murder or, I don't know, domestic violence, of course. But if it's a parking fine, well, robot is just fine. So in simpler cases, yes, Estonia will start using it. And actually, from the government side, again, looking from the bigger picture of system architecture, actually, there is very little that AI can do, because as governments work on legal basis, which is a kind of a programming of if and then we need AI in the front and in the very back end in delivering services, but actually what goes on in the middle does not necessarily need to be an AI. So AI can be used in various cases, you probably all know of them, but making the government apparatus work on its own, it can be regular automation as well. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting question. I mean, fundamentally, there are obviously limitations in terms of the technology, but I think the real challenge is around figuring out how we implement AI. And at the moment, I think we are at a point where it's almost like the start of, digitization. We move from papers to computers, highly complex. We're at that point where there is so much that can be done that we could all be busy for the next 20 years just improving and automating the processes that are already in place. One of the key challenges, and the justice one is a great example, there's the Compass algorithm that was developed by North Point in the US that turned out to be hugely problematic and very, very racist. the big problem is not AI. The problem is bad study design, bias, bad use of data. And that's one of the things that we have to do from the outset. We have to be very careful how we implement AI, not where we implement AI. Now, there may be certain cases, let's avoid the particularly risky ones to start off with and focus on low-hanging fruit. But I don't think we need to avoid certain areas with AI. I just think we need to think very carefully about how it's done. And that means considering the ethics, considering the quality of the data. I mean, you mentioned about open data. I'm on the board of Open Data in Northern Ireland. Love open data, huge fan. So much of it's awful. You know, a friend of mine regularly gives lectures on how to do data cleansing, and he just uses the open data portal because it's the best place to get terrible data. But the thing is, his whole focus around there, it's not to criticize open data, it's to show the amazing value that's present in open data if you treat it right. And if you understand the data and you evaluate the data and you figure out how to clean it and how to treat it properly and how to prepare it, and then use it properly and look for the bias, look for the problems. So I think we need to be able to look at AI and realize that this is different. It's not a simple software implementation project. We've got to understand what we're doing, how we're doing it, why we're doing it, what the data is, and any potential problems in the data.
I think that's probably a view that would be quite widely held in the AI community. I wonder, though, I know, Marten, you said this wasn't a problem in Estonia, but if it came to a simple rules-based decision on a benefit claim or on a sentencing decision, do you think the public at large feel that comfortable that all of those steps can be gone through and that the regulation can be strong enough that there's real accountability when things go wrong?
At the moment, no. And that's the thing. We need to build public trust in AI. We need to let people understand what AI is and what it isn't. It's not Terminator. It's just maths. We need to let people understand that, but we also need to focus on transparency. So we have to be able to explain. I mean, it's obviously it's a challenge with deep learning, but you know, we need to focus on how we can explain how a decision was reached. And especially, again, even if it is just a traffic ticket or a parking fine, we have to be able to explain to people. There has to be an audit trail and there has to be explainability in the systems that we build that show exactly how this works. And that's the approach that we've taken ourselves in the systems we've built. We want to make sure that there's no black box, there's no magic here. It really is maths, and we can explain fundamentally what the driving factors were, what the features were that are actually we engineered into this, and why they've driven a decision to be made.
And is that a question that we should be solving state by state, or do you think there's an international dialogue that needs to take place? Natalia, maybe?
Yeah, no, definitely an international dialogue, because you know, if our systems don't go back and don't work across the pond, and we're having our platforms being used all over the world, then I think that there has to be, it's a responsibility, I think, of the community, of all the countries to come together and create some kind of, code of some sort, or ethics code, or standards. It's really important, because then, it can just takes more time to solve the big problems. But we've been using AI, for example, in the post office, on our U.S. post office since 1995, for recognizing handwritten. So now that simple thing actually has, can do 25 billion worth of letters across the 1 year, and it actually saves a ton of money. So it's, we've been using it for a long time. It's just, I think that the media and explaining to people and everything have, distorted, too many movies. And I think that this is something, but we've been using it, in different capabilities across the Department of Defense, Department of Agriculture. So it's more of a, let's really have a good conversation with the citizens and explain this better.
I think transparency is absolutely key, getting out the stories of the good stuff, because it's always the bad stuff that gets the headline. So police facial recognition has just had some pretty bad press in the UK. So getting out and talking about that and sort of communicating, I think, is really important. I think also, to pick up on Austin's point, there is the technological response to this. So we have an AI research program, and we have built an explainability tool, which is basically auditing algorithms. And this is the kind of thing where we can up our game and not just do transparency. We can say this is exactly why the decision was made in the way that it was, and get people feeling more comfortable about it. And I think the last point I'd just like to touch on is getting out the message that humans are biased. So it's not like AI is this inherently kind of inferior thing. It's just a different thing. And if the data that you feed it contains human biases, that will be replicated in the algorithm. But equally, there are ways you can treat the algorithm to make sure that it is more fair. You can tune the fairness of an algorithm in a way that you can't go in and tune someone's brain quite appropriately. So I think there's a level of communication, but also there's a technological response to what's happening, and we got to kind of up our game on both of those.
I'm conscious that we've done a lot of talking up here, and we have a big audience out there. So do we have any questions for the panel from the audience? We've got one back
there. We talked a bit about data, governments making the data that they publish more open and available, but the quality isn't always there. I'm curious what your guys' perspective on is around whose role it is to make the data accessible, because the government makes it available, but it's like not necessarily accessible to every government or every business to be used in a useful way. So curious what your thoughts are there.
It's a really interesting question. Actually, I remember before the GovTech challenge was started, I remember seeing an SBRI that was run in Scotland, no offense to anybody Scottish, where they actually ran an SBRI that was specifically focused on helping them make their open data more usable. And I thought, that seems like a really strange challenge. And so I went and looked at their data and realized it was all in PDFs. So I almost felt like sending an email to the challenge owner saying, stop publishing your data as PDFs and save yourself some money. But it is a really key question. I think there has to be better structures put in place to enable open data sharing. Using CCAN and the APIs around that for open data are really critical. We've got to make sure that open data can be shared and it can be accessed and it is machine readable, because otherwise, what's the point? So I think fundamentally that's an area, and you mentioned this idea of where there should be collaboration and people should work together. This is the kind of thing where this is non-competitive. We all have to use data. We all have to explain, how decisions are made by AI. And I think this is something that organizations can come together and work on. A number of years back, I used to work in the diagnostics and pharmaceutical industry. And a bunch of years ago, all of the pharma companies who are incredibly competitive and never talk to each other, they came together and formed the toxicology group, which basically decided, okay, one thing that we all face a problem with is toxicity in drugs, right? So when we first put a drug into a phase 1 trial, sometimes it damages, even kills people. So what they did was they actually started to share their data and work together, because there was no competitive advantage in having a non-toxic drug. No toxic drug gets to the market, it just doesn't work. So they actually formed this sort of pre-competitive collaboration that actually advanced toxicology research by decades just by opening up that data and working together. And I think there's probably a lot that we can do in the AI space to really try and advance that as well. I've spoken to people recently from Hartree Institute who are actually looking at the idea of even open algorithms, so that essentially they try to build and make public pre-trained algorithms that you can essentially use for retraining rather than having to build everything from scratch. And again, I think this is something that as we move forward, open sourcing of algorithms is going to become as common as open sourcing of software.
I mean, the problem too is that the agencies and departments work in silos. And it's just so frustrating that, and you have to realize that not until recently do we have a system where we can actually talk to each other. So I think that top-down approach of the president or prime minister, whoever, says everyone has to have one system in place, everyone has to communicate. And believe me, it was tough. People didn't want to share their information between agencies. The same country and the same, it's better for everyone. But they're very territorial because that's what they believed and that's what they were trained to do. So I think that goes back to when you put language in any grant or any funding or any budget, you have to force them to be able to cooperate. Because honestly, I came from working with NATO and getting 3 countries to talk to each other. But I couldn't get 2 counties in the same state to share the same data on water and transportation. Doesn't make any sense.
Any other questions from the audience? Got a couple at the back. Guy in a grey coat. Yeah.
You mentioned the issue of explicability. Could you discuss it in more specific, concrete terms as to what it means to you and what the way you're developing explicability, what that means?
Yeah, I am not a deeply technical member of faculty. I will do my best. But fundamentally, for the first time, we're going into algorithms and substituting different variables and looking at what is the most material contribution to the outcome, the most predictive variable. More than that, the tool that we've built can look at what the outcomes are for particular protected groups. And then if, the other thing to say is there are so many different definitions of fairness. Does fairness mean the same outcome for each protected group? Does it mean mapping on to observed outcomes? There are many different definitions. So thinking very, very clearly about what fairness means, and then as maths is maths, you can then ensure the outcome of your algorithm delivers what you consider to be fair. But right back to that first point, if you're not telling people how you've defined fairness and then how you've audited it, you're not going to persuade them. So it's, do the maths, but also put out there what you're doing and be accountable for it and be ready to talk to it. You'll find more details on our website, which will do a more technical job.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's an interesting question. And I think sometimes, personally, I think this is something that gets obfuscated and overcomplicated. But when we look at simple linear regression, right, the linear algebra behind that, y equals mx plus b, we know what those features are. We know what drives a decision in a linear regression. To be honest, the most complex neural net in the world is still features and weights. And if we understand what the features are and we understand what the weights are, we at least have more understanding of what the decision driving that is. And as Jean says, then you start to look at how you would debug that network, how you would deconstruct that. And if you replace a feature, you start to see how those weights, how the interplay of those weights actually starts to make an impact on the decision. So as I say, I think this is all very doable. I've spoken to a lot of people on this recently. And one of the key messages is everyone knows that they have to do it, but they don't really have time. And I think that's where, again, cross-collaboration can support this, because we all need to be able to explain the AI. We don't need to all invent the way that we do it. So again, I think we just need core tools, and I'm really looking forward to looking at faculty solution for this, because it's a core problem that everyone needs to solve.
All right. Hi.
And we've come to time, so thank you so much to our panelists. And we'll
I
move
have
on
a
to the
last
next
question.
session. Very quickly, one last question.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jyoti from UCL. So basically, my question goes for the AI users in the government services that you had mentioned. How challenging is the deep learning with regard to the speech recognition and self-driving cars? Would you like to put some light on it? Like, if there are any challenges that we are facing and how the use of AI is making a major difference?
What are the challenges that we're seeing, especially in the autonomous vehicle side of things?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's challenges with any infrastructure where we have to adapt new technology, and I think, we have 8,000 autonomous vehicles running around in Phoenix, Arizona, and so far we haven't had any big issues. But it's part of the way of how we grow a new technology. We have to figure out the city infrastructure first of all, and again back to the ethics standards, figuring out what happens if one of them crashes, who's at fault, right? That's going back to legislation, figuring out what is the component of this. But we, as as Americans, we tend to maybe push the boundaries a little too much, but we want to innovate as much as we can and put it out there, and we'll figure it out as we go along. But we're not going to create any obstacles or barriers to innovation. The whole point of it is to instigate, to disrupt, to create new ways of doing things, and we have to have that really good figuring out trust and figuring out good balances between all of us in many ways. So that's another topic for a very big panel. I'd love to talk about autonomous vehicles, but I think we're done for this panel. But thank you so much.
Great, thanks guys.